Rome, January 1897. Inside the Basilica of St. John Lateran, the air is thick with incense, sweat and anticipation. Bishops line the nave, their robes brushing the cold marble floor. Soldiers shift restlessly by the doors, their armour glinting in the torchlight. At the centre of this spectacle sits the defendant. He wears the robes of a pope, his head crowned with the papal tiara. But this pope is not alive. His skin is ashen, his eyes collapsed into black pits, his mouth hangs open as though caught in a silent scream. This is Pope Formosus, dead for months, exhumed from his tomb and forced to face a court. On this day, the Catholic Church will attempt something unimaginable. It will put a corpse on trial. History remembers it as the Cadaver Synod, one of the strangest and most grotesque trials ever staged. To understand how Rome descended to such horror, you need to picture the city in the late 9th century. Forget the image of serene pontiffs guiding their flock. This was a Rome torn apart by factions, where noble families treated the papacy as a prize in a brutal power game. The Spalitans, the Tusculans, the Carolingians, each had their claws in the throne of St. Peter. Kings and emperors meddled from afar. Every pope had patrons and every pope had enemies. Some were poisoned, others strangled. Some reigned barely weeks before being toppled. Into this storm, Formosus had lived many lives. Once the Bishop of Porto, he was sharp, ambitious and politically ruthless. He schemed with kings across the Alps, supported rival claimants to the imperial throne and was even excommunicated for conspiring against a predecessor. Yet, when fortune shifted, his sins were overlooked. In 1891, he was elected Pope. Rome was not a city of forgiveness. It was a city where grudges fermented like wine, and Formosus had created plenty. Formosus's papacy was brief, but it shook Rome. His boldest move was to crown Arnulf of East Francia as Holy Roman Emperor. In doing so, he tried to strengthen papal independence and weaken the Spalitan dynasty, who claimed Italy as their own. It was a gamble, and it failed. Arnulf's invasion faltered, his health broke, and his armies retreated. The Spalitans swept back into power with iron fists. They remembered every insult. To them, Formosus was a traitor who had dared challenge their authority, a pope who had elevated their rivals and humiliated their dynasty. His death in April 896 did nothing to cool their anger. Formosus was laid in his tomb, perhaps expecting rest. But in Rome, the dead were never beyond politics. The grudges he left behind were waiting for a chance to crawl out of the earth with him. Formosus' successor was Pope Stephen VI. Stephen was no independent leader. He was bound to the Spalitans, reliant on their power and haunted by their expectations. He knew his grip on the throne was tenuous. To secure himself, he needed to obliterate Formosus' legacy to prove his loyalty to his patrons. So, he conceived of an act that was both theatrical and vindictive. He would not merely denounce Formosus, he would unmake him. Stephen ordered that Formosus' corpse be dug up. The Pope who had crowned emperors was pulled from the ground, clothed again in silk and gold, crowned with a papal tiara and seated on a throne. What followed was not a trial in any sane sense. It was vengeance, ritualized and paraded before the church. The opening of the tomb must have been ghastly. Attendants broke the stone lid, prized the coffin apart, and dragged the body into the light. Months in the grave had not been kind. The flesh was shrunken, discoloured, streaked with damp and rot. The jaw sagged, the lips shriveled, the eyes collapsed. But none of this stopped Stephen's attendants. They dressed the cadaver in papal vestments, layered silks and embroideries over the stiffened frame. A jewelled ring clung to one darkened finger. At last, the corpse was crowned and set upright on a throne. Those present must have gagged at the stench, yet the stage was set. The Pope would be tried, though his voice was long gone. The basilica became a theatre of the macabre. Stephen took his seat as judge. Bishops, fearful or complicit, formed the jury. At the corpse's side, a deacon was forced into the grotesque role of defence lawyer, ordered to answer for the dead man. Stephen hurled accusations at the cadaver: perjury, ambition, illegally seizing the papacy. His words echoed off the stone, bouncing around the silent crowd. The deacon stammered out replies, his voice trembling as though speaking on behalf of the grey, sagging body slumped beside him. Witnesses whispered, crossed themselves, or turned away. Some laughed nervously, others looked on in horror. The sight was absurd, but beneath the absurdity was terror, a reminder of how thoroughly politics had consumed the sacred. And of course, the verdict was never in doubt. Then came the symbolic punishments. His robes were torn away, the ring was ripped from his finger, and in a gesture both theatrical and cruel, the 3 fingers he once used for blessings were hacked off. The mutilated body was dragged from the throne, hauled through the streets of Rome, and finally hurled into the dark waters of the Tiber. It was meant as humiliation beyond death, but it was also a warning to the living. Even the grave could not protect you from Rome's politics. The city did not respond as Stephen hoped. Ordinary Romans recoiled in disgust. Even in an age when violence was routine, this act crossed the line. To put a corpse on trial was sacrilege. Rumours spread. Some claimed the body washed back ashore, rejected by the river. Others whispered of divine wrath. Riots broke out. Within months, Stephen himself was overthrown, imprisoned, and strangled to death in his cell. The Cadaver Synod had claimed a second victim. Later popes scrambled to repair the damage. Theodore II ordered Formosus reburied with honour. John IX went further, annulling the Cadaver Synod, restoring Formosus's acts and forbidding future trials of the dead. But the stain lingered. The Cadaver Synod had revealed the papacy's corruption to the world, showing just how far politics had warped faith. The Cadaver Synod remains one of the most grotesque episodes in church history, a trial not of the living but of the dead. It reminds us how power can twist rituals into theatre, how vengeance can strip even the dead of dignity. And if you thought this was strange, wait until you hear the time an entire city danced itself to death.